Southern Greece, birthplace of the Western world as we know it today. Home to an ancient civilization that influenced everything from the languages of Europe to philosophy, politics, art, architecture, and even sports. A land where fearless Spartan warriors challenged the might of tyrants. And a temple where a mystic oracle delivered the word of the gods to hopeful pilgrims. But southern Greece has more to celebrate than ancient history, because the glories of the past are mirrored in the wonders of the present. One of the world's longest suspension bridges, built to withstand earthquakes and typhoons, whose foundations move with the very earth beneath them. An extraordinary architectural legacy that still baffles engineers after 2,500 years. Where a race run to commemorate an ancient battle inspired the most popular of all sports. And two legendary stadiums would inspire the greatest athletic spectacle in the world, the Olympic Games. In one of the world's oldest cities, a unique ceremonial event. Here mythology informs the everyday, like the legendary daughters of Zeus. Modern-day water nymphs dance in perfect synchronicity. And the spirit of Icarus lives on beneath the single wing of a daredevil champion. From the street artist whose work inspires a city and challenges the dominion of the powerful, to the dark secret of an idyllic island where a Hollywood movie brought a horrific war crime to the attention of the world. This is southern Greece, like you've never seen it before. The story of Western civilization begins in Greece, and it was here in the south where the first chapter of that story was written. Around the size of New Jersey, the Peloponnese Peninsula connects to southern mainland Greece by a narrow land bridge called the Isthmus of Corinth. 3,000 years ago, before the disconnected city-states of Greece were unified, this was the stronghold of Mycenaean civilization. Here in the northeast of the peninsula stands the best-known monument from that time, the ancient citadel of Mycenae. This is the Lion Gate, excavated in the 19th century, portal to a city that was once home to 30,000 people. Around 1150 BC, Mycenae was burned by invading pirates, known as the Sea Peoples. But an even greater society would emerge from the ashes. Here in the Peloponnese, the divided Greek city-states would reform into one coherent cultural entity. What brought them together was an event still famed throughout the world. A symbol of unity through competition, the Olympic Games. And in 776 BC, this is where it all began. The sanctuary of Zeus at Olympia, site of the first Olympiad, a sporting event that would come to define Greek culture. The ancient Greeks believed sport and religion were closely aligned and often held games at sacred sites. The extensive ruins, which include athletic training areas, a great stadium, and a great temple containing one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the statue of Zeus. Standing 41 feet tall, adorned with gold, ivory, and jewels, it once occupied half the width of the temple aisle, but is now sadly lost to the ages. From the 8th century BC to the 4th century AD, the games were held here at Olympia, with spectators ranged on the slopes, all their traditional differences, even wars, temporarily set aside. Athletes competed nude, a tradition that started when one runner shed his clothes to run more freely. Women were banned, but not because of nudity. The sanctuary of Zeus was sacred to men. Women had their own sacred places. These are the ruins of the Temple of Hera, the wife of Zeus, goddess of women, childbirth, and fertility. The temple was destroyed by an earthquake in the 4th century and partially reconstructed in modern times. In ancient times, the temple contained a magnificent gold and marble altar, displaying wreaths awarded to the Olympic champions. This is where the modern Olympic torch is lit, ignited by sunlight reflected in a parabolic mirror. In 2008, the flame traveled a record-breaking 85,000 miles to the Summer Games in Beijing, China. But before the flame leaves Greece, the torch-bearer carries it to one final time-honored ceremonial location. This is the Great Marble Horseshoe of the Panathenaic Stadium in Athens. Built in the 4th century BC, this is where the capital hosted its own athletic games for 800 years. When Christianity arrived in the 4th century AD, all such events fell into decline because of their link to Zeus. It would be 16 centuries before the Olympics returned to Greece. But when they did, in 1896, this is where they took place. Women weren't allowed to compete at those first modern games. But times have changed. And like a host of female Olympians before her, Maria Politsu is no stranger to firsts. In 1996, at the Summer Games in Atlanta, Georgia, she was the first female Greek athlete to run the women's marathon. Maria began running competitively at the age of 17. By her calculations, she has clocked up over 170,000 miles since, the equivalent of 6 laps of the globe. Her motto, nothing is impossible. Thousands of well-cushioned feet pound the streets of Athens on the final stage of a legendary race. This is the city's annual marathon. Not just a sporting event, but also a commemoration of one of the most historic events in Greek history. In 490 BC, an Athenian army of 10,000 men defeated the mighty Persian invasion forces of King Darius at Marathon, 26 miles east of Athens, saving the capital from almost certain destruction. The Greek triumph would change the course of human history, preserving a cherished ideal that Athenians called demokratia, or rule of the people. This blur of iron and glass represents Phidippides, an Athenian soldier who ran non-stop from Marathon to Athens, bringing news of the victory and giving the modern event its name. Today, the marathon is one of the most popular of all sports. The US alone hosts 1,100 races every year, along with thousands of events worldwide, from the North Pole to the Great Wall of China. All following in the footsteps of an Athenian legend. Athens is one of the world's oldest cities, continuously inhabited for over 5,000 years. In Greek mythology, the goddess Athena became its protector, giving the city her name. In gratitude, the people built this temple in her honor, an enduring symbol of ancient Greece. Visible from almost every part of the capital, the ancient citadel of the Acropolis was built by the Bronze Age Mycenaeans. It's the most impressive surviving monumental complex in the world, and its centerpiece is the Parthenon, a temple dedicated to Athena, goddess of wisdom and warfare. When it was built in the 5th century BC, the Athenian Empire was at the height of its power. Even now, undergoing restoration work after 2,500 years, it remains a masterpiece of architecture and engineering. The huge Doric columns that once supported the roof are over 6 feet in diameter and 34 feet high. The interior is about half the size of an American football field. The apparently straight lines of the structure are actually optical illusions, curved and tapered with mathematical precision to look that way. Restoration of the Parthenon and the citadel around it began in 1975, an ongoing project to preserve the majesty of this extraordinary ancient architecture. Athens is a city where the glories of the past aren't just kept alive, but fiercely defended. Every Sunday at 11 a.m., crowds gather at Syntagma Square in Athens to watch a unique ceremonial event. Don't be distracted by the colorful headgear, pleated kilts, and foot tassels. These elaborately dressed soldiers are Presidential Guard, the Evzones, an elite unit of the Greek army. Here at the tomb of the unknown soldier, in the shadow of the Parliament, they perform one of the most precise and unusual military displays in the world: the changing of the guard. The distinctive Evzone uniform dates back to the battle dress worn by mountain fighters in the Greek War of Independence, almost 2 centuries ago. And this precisely coordinated ceremony is imbued with historical significance. The black tassel on the toe of the shoe conceals a kicking blade for close combat with the enemies of Greek liberty. The kilt has 400 pleats, one for each year of the Turkish occupation from the 15th to the 19th century. The red hat symbolizes the blood of those fallen in battle. Switching positions every 15 minutes, the guardsmen punctuate their signature march by striking the ground with their feet, letting dead heroes know that the Evzones are always on duty, guarding their honor. Their fortitude is legendary. In 2001, when a protester threw a Molotov cocktail and set a wooden guardhouse on fire, the Evzone on duty refused to move until ordered to do so by his officer. Political statements are everywhere on the streets of Athens. Graffiti, from the Greek word graphi, meaning to write, has been a feature of the city's buildings since ancient times, when slogans were carved into stone walls. Greek artist Ino started his career as a graffiti artist 20 years ago. Like the subject he's working on now, he wears a mask, creating large-scale figurative murals like this recent piece called Mind Control. His distinctive work on the streets of Athens and elsewhere has evolved from the lettering and abstract designs to stylized fragmented forms in photorealistic grayscale with touches of light blue. Here at the Port of Piraeus near Athens, Ino spent several days working at height on this piece called Lost. The blue vortex represents lingering memories of the global financial crisis, a trauma still etched in the consciousness of Greek people. In a city whose walls have held politics to account for thousands of years, street art embodies the very spirit of democracy. For Eno, political and social injustice is what art is meant to depict, a defiant ideology integrated with the architecture of Greece. Symbolism and unexpected connections are everywhere in Greek culture. Just as art and politics intertwine on the streets of Athens, today, ancient myth and athleticism come together in the rooftop pool of a city center hotel. These are the Naiads, a group of synchronized swimmers led by their founder, Konstantina Galiotou. Each one is a former member of the Greek national team. They take their name from the water nymphs of mythology, female spirits who, by their grace, protected the streams and rivers of ancient Greece. The Naiads were the greatest of the water nymphs, said to be the daughters of Zeus himself. A fitting name for this six-woman team, all professional swimmers at the top of their game. The picturesque harbor of Passalimani, 7 miles southwest of Athens, has several impressive claims to fame. In ancient times, it was the main military base of the Athenian fleet. At the historic 1896 Summer Olympics, these waters hosted the swimming events. But for rock fans, all that pales compared to what happened in the summer of 1979, when the legendary band Pink Floyd came here on vacation. Relaxing in the marina on their yacht, they were inspired to write several tracks for their seminal concept album, The Wall. 3 years later, The Wall, regarded as one of the most influential albums of all time, would inspire a musical film of the same name, directed by legendary British filmmaker Alan Parker. Today, the marina at Passalimani is a showcase for the super yachts and luxury cruisers of the fabulously wealthy. The marina can accommodate over 600 vessels up to 150 feet in length. These days, the owners are more likely to be tech billionaires and Russian oligarchs than rock stars. In high season, the combined wealth on show here would tend to leave you comfortably numb. This curious convoy of vehicles crossing the Marathon Dam in Attica is a miniature showcase of Greece's contribution to the automotive industry. Collector Alex Vaizeos drives a 200cc Attica Cabriolet, one of only 6 ever made. It once belonged to the legendary Greek shipping magnate Stavros Niarchos. The Mini Cooper, driven by Andreas Ilianopoulos, is one of the world's most influential cars. It was the creation of his great uncle, auto designer Sir Alexander Issigonis, the man they called the Greek god of automobile design. The indigenous Greek car industry never really took off, but for patriotic auto enthusiasts like Andreas and Alex, technology comes second to style and character. In Greece, if you want power, all you have to do is ask the gods. In ancient times, Delphi, on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, overlooking the Corinthian Gulf, was considered the mystical center of the world. Like the legendary Icarus, who met his fate when he flew too close to the sun, professional paraglider Yannis Georgosopoulos shares a lifelong obsession with the majesty of flight. Unlike his mythological predecessor, however, Yannis is careful to keep his altitude in check as he soars above Delphi. Since 2013, he's been a member of the Greek national paragliding team, winning a host of international medals. Paragliding is a potentially dangerous sport, but the adrenaline rush Giannis feels, gliding thousands of feet above the ground, is part of the thrill. It takes nerves of steel for the paraglider as he spins toward the valley floor, before leveling off and gliding majestically out of danger. If only Icarus had thought of that. The Temple of Apollo at Delphi was once the most sacred site in all of Greece. This was where kings and commoners alike came to receive prophecies of the future, direct from the gods. Here, a sacred priestess, known as the Oracle of Delphi, was believed to have the power to predict the future. For more than 1,000 years, people from across the Mediterranean flocked here, seeking the gods' guidance on everything from personal affairs to international politics. They got their answers, but it turns out the oracle may have been under the influence of something other than gods. The temple is located on a geological fault line that emits gases, including the powerful intoxicant ethylene. Experts now believe the divine visions of the oracle were actually caused by psychedelic delirium. Greece's location above numerous tectonic fault lines has made the country's engineers especially adept at dealing with unpredictable shifts of the Earth beneath their feet. And not just the Earth. The Rio Antirio Bridge, designed by Santiago Calatrava, crosses the Gulf of Corinth, connecting the northern Peloponnese to mainland Greece. At 1.8 miles, it's the world's longest fully suspended cable stay bridge. Tectonic stress in this region actually expands the Gulf by 1.2 inches a year. To counter this, the piers are not buried into the seabed, but rest on a specially constructed gravel layer so they can move laterally with the expanding Gulf. It's an engineering feat that enables the bridge to absorb the energy of an earthquake. By replacing a journey once possible only by ferry, the bridge has dramatically improved access to the northern Peloponnese. Functionality and form are all well and good, but this being Greece, what really counts is beauty. As Calatrava's fellow designer Daniel Libeskind once said, architecture is not based on concrete and steel and the elements of the soil. It's based on wonder. At night, this masterpiece of modern engineering takes on a dreamlike quality, with its orange illuminations reflected in the waters of the Gulf and its majestic pylons bathed in blue light. Almost 10,000 vehicles a day traverse the bridge. But by night, some locals are known to make the crossing just for the inner peace this extraordinary structure seems to bring. In the soul of Greek architecture, form is more important than function. Looking for all the world like an interstellar craft, this is Villa Ypsilon, a futuristic residence embedded into a hill near the fishing village of Messenia in the southwest Peloponnese. Surrounded by olive groves, this luxurious summer home was designed by this man, architect Teo Sarantoglu Lalis, and prefabricated off-site. The green roof takes the form of the Greek letter Y, or Ypsilon, which gives the villa its name. A luxurious open-plan interior with 3 bedrooms and 3 courtyards links seamlessly to the rooftop, where Theo can enjoy spectacular panoramic views. This house embodies modern Greek ingenuity, and in another part of the Peloponnese, that same ingenuity appears on an even greater scale. The Peloponnese is a peninsula, not an island. Technically, though, it's both, and this is why. Beneath the busy highways, multi-million-dollar boats glide serenely through the Corinth Canal. Most of their owners are blissfully unaware of its turbulent 2,000-year-long construction history. The narrow land bridge of the Isthmus of Corinth connects the Peloponnese to mainland Greece. In 67 AD, the infamous Roman Emperor Nero had 6,000 slaves complete nearly half a mile of canal before he committed suicide the following year. In the mid-1800s, several attempts were made to resume the work, all of which ended in failure and financial ruin, giving rise to the belief that the landscape itself was cursed. In 1893, the canal was finally completed, bisecting the isthmus, joining the Gulf of Corinth to the Aegean Sea, effectively turning the Peloponnese into an island. 4 miles long, banked by walls rising 170 feet, it's an engineering marvel, 20 centuries in the making. But even after it opened, the old curse still appeared to be in effect. Seismic activity caused the soft limestone rock of the walls to collapse, leading to long closures. At the end of World War II, the retreating German army blocked the waterway with thousands of tons of debris. The canal's maximum width of 80 feet makes it too narrow for most ocean-going ships. Some mid-sized vessels can just squeeze through, saving their pilots a 420-mile detour around the Peloponnese. Today, having survived earthquakes, war, and a mythical curse, the Corinth Canal operates 24 hours a day, except on Tuesdays, when it closes between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. for routine maintenance. Strictly speaking, this waterway means that the Peloponnese is entirely detached from mainland Greece. And that physical separation resonates with the peninsula's fierce historical autonomy. Near the modern Peloponnesian town of Sparti lie the ruins of what was once the most powerful city-state of ancient Greece. In the words of Gerard Butler as Leonidas in the 2007 action film 300, this is Sparta. Admittedly, there's not much to see, and that's because the Spartans, the dominant military power of Greece from the 7th to the 4th century BC, were warriors, not builders. As the ancient Greek historian Thucydides once said, if the population of Sparta suddenly deserted the city and then strangers arrived, they would not believe this was the mightiest city in all of Greece. The legacy of Sparta was built on countless battles, but one stands out above all the rest. Here on the east coast of the Balkan Peninsula, a monument marks the site of the greatest last stand of the ancient world, the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC. This statue depicts the Spartan king Leonidas, who along with 300 soldiers held off the enormous Persian army of King Xerxes for 3 days at a mountain pass known as Thermopylae, or Hot Gates. Today, the ancient pass lies beneath 66 feet of soil, But the battle still looms large in world history, celebrated in art, literature, and on the big screen, most notably by Zack Snyder's epic film 300. Though eventually defeated, Leonidas and his men would inspire their fellow Greeks to rise up against the Persian invasion, a fight they would ultimately win 10 years later at the Battle of Marathon. This is the eastern Peloponnesian island of Hydra. Population 3,000. Well, most of the time. Every year, this otherwise quiet place fills with cultural tourists. They're here to visit the galleries, spot the celebrities, and bask in Hydra's fashionable contemporary art scene. The only vehicles allowed on Hydra are garbage trucks, so water taxis are the only way to reach the beaches and restaurants in remote villages. Long before it was a home for wealthy collectors and part of the summer art scene, Hydra was a refuge for artists and intellectuals. In the 1960s, Canadian singer Leonard Cohen bought a house here, which he shared with his girlfriend and muse, Marianne Elon. While living on the island, Cohen wrote 2 novels and one of his best-known songs, Bird on the Wire. It's not big or yellow, but it is a taxi. This is the Neso, operated by Sea Captain Manos Loudaros, one of the last original Hydra water taxis. Today he's collecting tourists from a remote church on one of Hydra's small islands. Manos describes his taxi as a Venetian gondola. It's much faster and more maneuverable than the modern boats. It's ideal for taking guests to the hidden coves, villages, and small islands of Hydra's coast. After years as a captain on cargo and passenger ships, Manos has operated his own water taxi here on Hydra since 2014. Guest safety is guaranteed, as Manos is a former graduate of the first Naval Academy in Greece, located right here in the center of Hydra. Founded in 1749, the Academy has already produced 2,800 captains. Even before they graduate, the cadets are so well trained, they regularly assist the crews of massive container ships. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to walk in the footsteps of a god? And not just any god, the king of gods. Well, you've come to the right place. The terrain of the Peloponnese changes dramatically as you travel inland. Here, the white sands and coastal cliffs give way to majestic tree-covered peaks and deep ravines. Today, professional trekker Stratos Ayasotis and his work colleagues are establishing the route of a new tourist trail through the river gorges of his native Peloponnese. Brought together by a shared passion for the environment, these trekkers avoid the beaten track, wearing helmets to protect against falling rocks. It's a growing trend in this part of Greece, finding unexpected paths through the wilderness to enjoy the untamed beauty of nature. Right now, they're following the valley of the river Neda as it flows toward the Ionian Sea from its source at Mount Lycaon in the western Peloponnese. In Greek mythology, it was here that the young Zeus grew up, hidden from his murderous father Cronus by the water nymph Neda. In time, Zeus would become king of the gods, but he would never forget the debt he owed to his beloved nursemaid. And so, according to legend, he named the river in her honor. But there are places in Greece whose waters preserve memories of a very different kind. Off the coast of Laconia, in the southern Peloponnese, lie the submerged remains of a city thought to have been inhabited since the Bronze Age, around 2800 BC. Pavlopetri has been described as an underwater Pompeii, a city frozen in time. In 1967, British archaeologists found evidence of a highly advanced civilization, uncovering insights into an astonishing lost world. More recently, Pavlopetri has been the subject of new research, using robots and 3D mapping to reveal a layout that has not only survived centuries of erosion, but resembles the blueprint of a modern city. So far, at least 15 large buildings have been identified. Some are two-story houses with large courtyards, upstairs bedrooms with views of the sea, and flushing toilets. Pavlopetri was a port city with trading links across the Mediterranean. It thrived here for 2,000 years, during a time that saw the birth of Western civilization and the mythical Trojan War of Homer's Odyssey. Around 1000 BC, a series of 3 powerful earthquakes shifted the bedrock on which Pavlopetri was built, plunging the whole city beneath the sea. Today, it is a remarkable insight into the very foundation of our own way of life. To the west of the Peloponnese, Kefalonia is the largest of the 7 Ionian islands, known collectively as the Heptanies. It's an island of stunning beauty, but it's situated atop a major tectonic fault line, and seismic activity results in dozens of minor tremors every year. Majestic peaks rise hundreds of feet above the sea, sweeping down to the island's many bays and white sandy beaches. But Kefalonia has also been shaped by human history. On the west coast, overlooking Assos, the Venetians built a fort in the late 16th century to protect the town from attack by opportunistic pirates. Many of the modern buildings here are designed to withstand seismic shock, a lesson town planners learned in the aftermath of a catastrophic earthquake in 1953. It's a constant reminder of the unpredictability of life lived above the ever-moving tectonic plates of the Ionian Sea. Kefalonia remains an especially popular destination for Italian tourists, drawn here not just for this idyllic landscape and the breathtaking blue waters, but for an altogether different reason. They come to remember the victims of a massacre. During the Second World War, the Ionian Islands were occupied by Italian forces. In 1943, around 12,000 soldiers of the Italian Acqui Division were stationed here on Kefalonia. But when Italy changed sides in the war, the garrison found itself pitted against its former German allies. Running short of ammunition, realizing defeat was inevitable, the Italian commanders negotiated a surrender. But the Germans exacted a terrible revenge, ordering the mass execution of 5,000 unarmed Italian soldiers in cold blood. Lost in the fog of war, the atrocity remained unknown to the wider world. Until 2001, when the movie Captain Corelli's Mandolin once more brought the atrocity to light. The film, starring Nicolas Cage and Penelope Cruz, was shot entirely on location here on the island. The heart-rending scene featuring the Kefalonia massacre was filmed here at the beautiful ruined village of Old Vlachata. Only one man was ever brought to justice. In October 2013, 90-year-old German Wehrmacht Corporal Alfred Storck was finally convicted for his role in the mass execution and sentenced to life imprisonment. Nestled in a valley in the northern Peloponnese lies the sleepy hamlet of Kalavrita. At first glance, it looks like any other Greek mountain village, except for the fact that this is the final destination of a remarkable journey. A trip on the Odontotos Rak Railway is a memorable experience for any commuter, but it's not for the faint of heart. Millions of tons of rock appear to be hanging above the line, impossibly suspended, waiting to crush the carriages below. The train inches slowly through clearings gouged from the mountain. At times, it seems there's barely enough room to pass. Passing among the highest peaks of the Peloponnese, the Odontotos Railway is an engineering marvel. It travels along a conduit that seems to have been formed by Mother Nature herself. The track begins in the coastal town of Diakoptol and runs uphill for 14 miles, following the natural contours of the Voraikos Gorge as it passes through a landscape of breathtaking beauty. The train takes an hour to reach the terminus at Kalavrita, 2,460 feet above sea level. Construction of the line began in 1889. Despite the enormous technical challenge, it was judged to be a better option than building a road through the same terrain. The first obstacle faced by engineers was the limited space. There was only enough room for a single track, and it had to be extremely confined. At just 2.5 feet wide, it's the narrowest gauge railway in the world. Another challenge was the steep gradient. In order to prevent the wheels of the train from slipping on the steep climb, the engineers built a special cog track running down the middle of the line. A toothed wheel beneath the locomotive locks into this track, providing stability and grip for the steep ascent. Today, this extraordinary line blends seamlessly into its natural surroundings, thanks to plans drawn up by Greek railway engineers over 130 years ago. It remains a magnificent expression of form and function, an imaginative practical solution that enhances the very landscape into which it was carved. A fitting symbol for the ingenuity, resilience, and glorious creative spirit of southern Greece.